Hey, what's going on, roleplayers? It's the Bard here, and welcome back to the corner. And I am going to be back bigger, bolder, and bardier than ever before. So I just finished an awesome series on Warlock that was so much fun to make. So what is it you guys are after these days? Well, it's all Sorc. It just seems that everywhere I go, people are asking me for Sorcerer videos. Can you talk about melee Sorcs? Maybe an analysis on various Sorcerer archetypes. More archetype analysis videos, please. I like your voice and the layout of your videos. Well, thank you. You're not a 21-year-old leggy blonde girl by any chance, are you? Well, I suppose if you don't ask, you don't get. Oh, wait, that's not the important bit. Do a Sorcerer video, yeah. Okay, cool, so I'll do a Sorcerer analysis. I'm usually not intending to analyze things, it just kind of happens that way when I make videos. I see a part and then I find a use for it. So to analyze an entire class and all of its variations, it could be quite deep, and it would be a bit of a challenge. Alright, let's explore the Sorcerer, and we'll see which of the archetypes works best for you. So in many respects, people tend to either want to go Sorcerer or Wizard, and they can't really decide which one to go for. And I find the best way to describe it is, if you want to think during the game, then go Wizard. If you're only happy to just think between the games, then go Sorcerer. Now that's not a dig at Sorcerers or Sorcerer players, but you have to understand that in many cases, you are limited to a very select few things that a Sorcerer can do. They just do them very, very well. We'll go over the class and its features a moment, just so that we can put that into context. Hit dice is 1d6 and you have no proficiency with armor, so get in the back and stay in the back. If you are really crazy, you can go for a melee Sorcerer build, but you need so much to make them work. They are good, they are fun, but they are dangerous as well, so if you're just starting out, I'd suggest stick with a normal ranged Sorcerer. You have the absolute most basic of weapon proficiencies as well, but you shouldn't need to have anything more than that. Simply keep a dagger in one hand for the odd opportunity attack, and in the very rare case that you're dealing with some kind of anti-magic or resistant thing, then maybe just use a crossbow or something. You should very rarely have need for anything from this proficiencies list. If you haven't picked a cantrip that has at least some improvement over anything that you've just read, then you have probably done something wrong. Sorcerers are like mobile artillery platforms. At least one of your cantrips should be a good enough damaging effect to be better than the weapons you start with. Your saves are Constitution and Charisma, your two most important ability scores, no matter what character or what archetype you're playing. You don't need to buy Resilient then in order to get con saves, because you've already got them, which makes concentration checks very, very easy for you throughout your entire career. So Warcaster is the better choice for you as a Sorcerer, because you can then get advantage as well as having the proficiency on the save. So skills then. Arcana. First and foremost, most important skill for any kind of arcane spellcaster. You're going to be the one that they come to in order to get all of the information about anything mystical and magical. Deception, Intimidation, and Persuasion all fall within the same sort of sphere. My personal choice would be Deception. I find Deception to be a generally more versatile skill, because not only can you use it for like fast talking, you can use it for gambling, you can use it for just blatant lying, and of course you can use it to make really convincing disguises. This is especially useful if you like to cast glamours, like Disguise Self. I don't think they're called glamours anymore, they just get called illusions, but it's the same principle. Basically spells that change a subject's sensory qualities to kind of make it look and feel, smell, or taste like something else, or maybe even disappear, like invisibility magic for example. Leave Intimidation to the Fighter and the Barbarian, and leave Persuasion to the Paladin or the Bard. Only pick Insight if you really want to be a truly wise character. It does come up every whip and flip, but to be honest, it's not something you're going to need all the time. As well as that, Religion is something you don't need either unless you're going for Divine Soul. Leave Religion to the Paladins and the Clerics. So now for the real reason that everyone picks Sorcerer, the Spell Sling. We're going to start with cantrips. Sorcerers get the most cantrips of any class. You start with 4 cantrips. That is an incredible amount of versatility. So because you get 4 to start with, you can afford to take 2 cantrips which have a varying damage type, and maybe 2 utility cantrips. So you're instantly going to have a great start to your Sorcerer's career. I think Shocking Grasp is probably a good choice because it's good for up close, and of course you get advantage on any target that's wearing armor. And for ranged, I would probably go with something like Acid Splash. I know that Firebolt deals more damage and it is an attack roll, so it has the chance to have a critical hit, but Acid Splash will attack multiple targets, so it might be worth considering doing that. If you want to go single target, there are good spells for it, but then again the Fighter is probably going to be going single target anyway, so you don't have to worry about it. So your spells refresh every long rest, that's fine, that's pretty standard for most classes. So now we're getting onto spells known. So you can take up to 2 spells known when you start, and you can get a maximum of 15 by the time you hit level 17. But of course you can mix and match with each level progression. You're allowed to change out old ones and put in new ones in its place. However, this is the most important bit I want to drive home. Additionally, when you gain a level in this class, you can choose one of your sorcery spells you know and replace it with another spell from the sorcerer spell list, which also must be of a level for which you have spell slots. Now think very carefully about that. You don't have to swap one out and put in one of the same level. You can swap one out and put in one of any level that you can cast. This can be a very useful tool, especially for some particular kinds of sorcerous origins. Divine Soul is one that comes to mind because you get access to certain divine spells, and of course when you're swapping them out you have to replace them with something from the cleric list, so you're going to get better cleric spells. And then there's your Font of Magic, your flexible casting and your sorcery points. So your flexible casting will allow you to create spell slots using sorcery points, and you can use spell slots and turn them into sorcery points for fueling other things, for example your meta magic feats. Think very carefully before you do this. If you cast, say, something like Finger of Death, which is a 7th level spell, it's single target, so a twin spell of that would cost you 7 sorcery points to get what is essentially another 7th level spell. Whereas if you were converting into a spell slot, 7 sorcery points would get you a 5th level spell slot, which you could use for something like Cone of Cold, for example. I suggest you do the calculations beforehand, look at the practicality of the numbers, compared to how many sorcery points you have available, then work out when it's practical for you to do, say, a double cast, or if it's more practical for you to have an AoE and then replace that spell slot afterwards. So those are the basics of Sorcerer for those of you that don't know. Keep that in mind as we move on to the Sorcerous origins. Alright, let's get into the Draconic Bloodline, and the first thing on the list is your Dragon Ancestor. The dragon colour and the damage type aren't important at this point in your progression, so the first thing that you really get is double proficiency when you're interacting with dragons, and the ability to read, write and speak Draconic. Unless the campaign revolves specifically around dragons, you will probably not use this at all. You will probably not care enough about this to use it or even remember that you have the ability. Draconic Resilience gets you 1 additional hit point per level and gives you dragon scales, which will essentially be like a permanent mage armor. This ability alone makes the Draconic Bloodline a good choice for beginners, but unfortunately it really just tapers off at the end, because you're going to want to use better spells to get better armor, you're going to want to use magical items, you're going to want to be in the back, you're going to want to make better use of tactics, so it's kind of a crutch to start off with. I don't really see a great deal of value in it, and if your tactics are correct, if you're staying in the back, if you're avoiding melee combats, if you're not making yourself the target of aggression, then that's what you should be doing. That is the right thing to do. In all honesty, this isn't giving you much more than a daily casting of mage armor. Elemental Affinity is my biggest source of contention within all the sorceress archetypes. You get a bonus to damage equal to your charisma modifier on damage rolls that are associated with your Draconic Ancestry. This is a perfectly fine ability for dealing extra damage, but it does make you a little bit of a one-trick pony. And it somewhat forces you down the route of taking Elemental Adept, because if you're going to be casting the same types of spells over and over and over again, then you don't want creatures to resist them. So if you're going for the big damage, you then need to make sure that they're not resisting any of it as well. So it almost forces you to take that feat, whether you want it or not. The secondary ability is okay as well, however an hour of elemental resistance isn't something that you really need, especially if it's only in the same energy type as your Draconic Ancestry. To be honest, I don't think it's that great, because you need to do something in order to get resistance to something, which in and of itself isn't so bad. But take this example. Red Dragon swoops in and it decides that it wants to have a crack at you, which is fine. They're angry, they're big, they're nasty, that's what they would probably do. But you would need to fire a firebolt at that creature in order to get your defenses up in preparation for its breath weapon. Now, in that situation, it might be a little better because, let's be fair, they do a lot of damage with their breath weapons. But it's still a bit of a waste of an action when you'd be much better off casting a cold spell to get some really high damage on them. So you have to kind of weigh up, is it worth me gimping out my damage in order to improve my defense? And it only works in that one particular situation as well. If you have a white dragon coming down and starting something on you, yeah, you can do some damage to it, but your defenses are useless against it. The point I'm trying to get across is that many creatures that have energy types both are resistant to that energy type and usually attack with that energy type. There are other spells you can use to the exact same effect. Even something as simple as Absorb Elements is great, because not only is it going to give you some resistance, you even get a bonus on your melee attacks as well. So if you are low on spells, at least you can use an attack which has got some decent damage added onto it. Again, this ability is one that will force you down the Elemental Adept route. Draconic Wings. Looks good on paper, ultimately pointless. In what world is a level 14 ability to fly in any way comparable to a 3rd level spell that gives you the same ability? And fly actually gives you a 60-foot movement speed. Draconic Wings is based on your own speed. Anything that causes your speed to vary is going to affect the rate at which you can fly as well. Even something as ridiculous as stepping on a caltrop will affect the rate at which you can fly. If you decide to go flying afterwards, your current speed is reduced, because that's what it is. It's your current speed, not your base speed. So, like I say, stepping on a caltrop will stop you from flying further and longer. It's pointless. Draconic Presence is even worse than Draconic Wings. It's level 18 and they want you to spend 5 sorcery points in order to basically cast Fear. Do you know what 5 sorcery points can get you? A level 3 spell slot, which you can use to cast Fear. If you're going down the route of a Fear caster, at least you can use meta magic to get disadvantage on the saving throw against your Fear effect. So why would you ever need anything like Draconic Presence? Yeah, okay, the charmed effect is quite nice, but it's more of a social thing than a combat thing. The Fear effect is okay, but you only really get the benefit of an increased radius. You still have to concentrate on it, it still requires an action. It's really no different than just casting a spell. And 5 sorcery points, as well as using up your concentration, meaning all you can then do is to cast non-concentration spells and cantrips? I think this is terrible. In summary, I think the Draconic Bloodline breaks down like this. Discount expertise that you'll never use. Discount protection from energy that you rarely need, discount fly that's too high in level, and discount fear that is of no value to you whatsoever. The only thing that's of any real value is the Draconic Resilience and the Elemental Affinity's primary ability to get you increased damage. Beyond that, I don't think you're really getting very much. I would really consider multi-classing into something else if you are going with the Draconic Sorcerer Bloodline, because once you get to level 6 you've got all the best abilities and everything else is just secondary. Unless you're going for a very thematic build or a very unique sort of multi-class character, I would suggest that Draconic Bloodline is one of, if not the worst, Sorcerer's Origin to pick. So next we have Wild Magic, and I think it's going to be a lot more fun, a lot more practical, and a lot more tactical than it first appears. So I can hear the cries of the beginners from over the hills. Wild magic, but something terrible could happen. But something amazing could happen as well. Every time you cast, roll a d20. On a natural one, you have to roll on the Wild Surge table. It's a 5% chance of it happening, but it's a 5% chance that you could get something really incredible going on as well. One of the best things about it is it doesn't require your concentration for the Magic Surge table to happen. It will continue to go even if you're concentrating on something else or even if you're taking other actions. But the most important thing to remember is it's up to the DM when and if you roll on this table, and that is very important. There are a lot of good effects that can happen on this table, some of which can be utterly devastating in the right circumstances. A DM has to weigh up the fact that something amazing could happen on your behalf and something terrible could happen to his creatures, so it works both ways. But you have much more power in this than you realise. Tides of Chaos gives you an advantage on either an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw. This is brilliant. This is an amazing ability just to have that you can pull out like that. Now the DM can make you roll on the Wild Surge table whenever you cast a spell of first level or higher. If you do that, you get to use this ability again. This is what you want. You want to have additional uses of your Wild Surge table. You want more chances in order to inflict something on your enemy. If desperate, you can even use this ability to your advantage again. Say for example you roll on the Wild Surge table and then you roll that there's a fireball centered on yourself. Give yourself advantage on the saving throw with the Tides of Chaos ability that you've just got back. then you're only going to take half damage. You might even be able to use a spell or something to reduce that even further. Now the DM has to decide whether or not you roll on this table again the next time you cast a spell of first level or higher, and if they do, you get the chance to have advantage all over again. So starting DMs might see this thing as something they kind of have to make you do every time. But more experienced DMs will realise that the odds are quite in your favour, especially with some of the abilities that are on the table. The more they allow you to use it, the more benefit it can be to you. The more chances you have to get advantage, the more chances you have to get a wild surge that can affect them negatively. Of course there will be instances where something negative could happen to you, but some of them really aren't as bad as they might first appear. For example, being frightened of the nearest creature to you until the end of your next turn usually isn't a big deal, because usually the nearest thing to you is one of your allies. A beard of feathers isn't going to cause you any distress. In fact, a dwarf wouldn't even notice a beard of feathers. Your character turning blue might be ridiculous for some characters, but it's a massive advantage for some others. If you're a tiefling and you suddenly turn blue, people no doubt be terrified. If you're a dragonborn, say a red dragonborn for example, and you suddenly turn blue, as you're out and about, someone will go, "Oh my god, a blue dragonborn," and they'll be so surprised when you start breathing fire all over them. Even some of the ones that seem truly devastating can be to your advantage. If you accidentally turn to the potted plant, for example, and you're behind cover, all the creatures see is that you disappear. If they run around the corner and look for you, you're not there. They won't even think twice about a potted plant. Bottom line, yeah, bad things do happen, but you can usually overcome certain things in certain ways, and it just teaches you to be more creative in dealing with those situations. So even if something goes wrong, it's usually a great role-playing experience. So at level 6, Bend Luck is a bonus on ability checks, attack rolls or saving throws for any one that you want, or a penalty to those same things for any enemy that you want. Bend Luck can tip the favour, but it's only 1d4 points to any of those things. So either as a penalty or as a bonus, you need to be careful about when and how you use it, because it costs you 2 sorcery points to do so. 2 sorcery points is a little bit pricey for a 1d4 bonus or penalty to either attack rolls, saving throws or ability checks, but it can help you in a pinch, and that's all you need it for. It's a useful ability that just guides the game the way you want it to go. Level 14, Controlled Chaos gives you 2 chances to roll on the Wild Surge table. This means 2 chances to get something really good, or if you get something bad, you can at least take the lesser of 2 evils. But even more fun, in my opinion, is you get 2 chances to roll either a 1 or a 2. If you get a 1 or a 2, you have to roll on the Wild Surge table every round for the next minute. And of course, you're using Controlled Chaos to get 2 chances to roll on that table and pick the best one that applies. Spell Bombardment isn't really a bad ability. It's a little bit late to get something like this at level 18, but you are going to be able to kick out a little bit extra damage with it. Now, it doesn't quite have the consistency of something like Elemental Affinity, but it does have the benefit of not being locked into a particular energy type. However, if you're using something like Firebolt, for example, which requires an attack roll, you can use your Tides of Chaos to give yourself advantage. When you have advantage, you have 2 chances to get a critical hit. Your Spell Bombardment will go off anyway if you roll the maximum on any of your dice, and whenever you get a critical hit, the amount of dice you roll is doubled anyway. I don't see enough people playing wild magic, and more power to those of you who do. I think too many people shy away from the fact that something terrible could go wrong, and they prefer something a little bit more controlled. I say let go of the notion of control, and just ride the wave of chaos. Your chaos-based abilities are a huge advantage to you and your allies, and a massive detriment to anyone who would stand against you. Furthermore, you have to be prepared for the fact that bad things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen to you anyway, because the DM is always going to be putting challenges in front of you. Don't worry about the fact that something could go wrong with your castings. Don't worry about the fact that something could go terrible for you if the Wild Surge happens. Something amazing could happen to you. Something amazing could happen to your party members. I say embrace the chaos, learn to let go. When you let go of that fear of something terrible happening, you get a much more relaxed and enjoyable role-playing experience. Release the fear, ride the chaos, and see where the effects lead the game to. That was part 1 of my Sorcerer analysis, covering the basics of Sorcerer, the Draconic Bloodline, and the Wild Magic. I'm going to do this in 2 parts where I cover all the additional Sorcerer's origins from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Thanks for sticking through to the end and watching this. Remember, comments and requests down below, hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, get notifications, like the video, and share it around to help the channel grow. Also, it's not too late for you to put in your ideas for Sub Sunday. Highest upvoted comment on that video will be the focus of the first Subscriber Sunday, which will be on February the 4th. And with that being said, I will see you guys next time at the gaming table.